G'day and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to go through with one of my rifles, which is my SAKO TRG 42, which is something that's been with us for a long time. It's my first very expensive, well it was for me, very expensive rifle that we purchased as a manufacturer's rifle, the SAKO TRG. I bought it in the base level I could. I bought it with, I got a bipod for it when I realised I liked the idea of what they'd built. I had a different muzzle brake on it. I didn't shell out for the genuine one. I had a different one. And that rifle, in truth, I did a lot of learning with. Certainly the one that took me out to, I think it was 2,800 yards and 3,000 yards and nearly hit at 3,000 metres and then got on at 2 miles after I think 3 efforts to get out there, got on there. The whole time the rifle was a very good rifle, but I was running into a few issues trying to shoot it with the heavy loads I was shooting. I was learning a lot with it. I was designing things. I made some mistakes in that process. Did a lot with it, and recently, for the last few years, haven't messed with it at all, but it shoots really well. But there's still been some fundamental little things that I wanted to change with it. Now, for all the great design bits and pieces for it, and I suppose at this point I would say for those people who have their TRG and love their TRG and think it's the best rifle ever built and don't want to hear anything different, turn away now because I'm about to offend you. For those people, in understanding that it is a great thing, but there are bits and pieces that I felt could do better, I've started down that road, and I'm sure there is pluses and minuses to what I've done, but I'm about to show that. So like I said, if you love yours as it is, don't want to hear anything different, then now's time for you to tune out. For those who want to know more, okay, well this is what it looks like now. Now there's a few features here. I'll go through them step by step. My bipod system's on the front of it for a very specific reason, not so much about putting my bipod system, but trying to fix another issue. And this is the one that actually spurred me into doing all that you see in front of you. The big difference is down the back here. It has basically a chassis buttstock on it, and there's a few other features going on inside there. Now this is the thing that was mainly something that I'd sort of worked with. And what you have seen this rifle shoot with is this bit of a Frankenstein thing that I've turned the factory buttstock into. There's a reinforcing point to try and stop it with bending through here. I'd modified it, puts a fair bit of weight inside this thing. I had run a different buttstock on it, run a bag rider on it, all sorts of bits and pieces of something that's fairly hard to play with. It's a funny plastic stuff that this is, like a Bakelite almost, but I don't know the exact term of the hard plastic they've used to make these out of, with an aluminium frame inside it, But I did a lot of work with it, and this was okay, but it still ended up with, even though I'd put this push bar in here to transfer load all the way down the back, and there's all sorts of stuff inside here to make it all work, it still had a bit of an issue of where I felt it was doing a little bit of crimping up when it actually fired. But for those people that don't know, I'll put this down. The way the TRG works is it has an aluminium U-tube, so a piece of U channel down the middle here, and then this simply bolts to it, which is just plastic on the front, and the rear bolts to it via, it's got a little aluminium piece inside it, and then it used a couple of bolts onto a little flat piece of steel to clamp this on. So it simply clamped. There was no solid fixing, it was simply clamping a U-tube, dancing or clamping inside another U-tube where it actually clamped inside there. So that was the structure on the back here, which to me, for heavy loads and a serious rifle and trying to transfer all your harmonics and do it as thoroughly as possible, just wasn't really up to the speed. Now don't get me wrong, this thing still performed very, very well. It did all the things I asked it to, but it really did come down to there was more getting yourself dialed into it because of that. And I suppose in the way of the engineering side of it, it is such a nice strong action, good trigger, all the bits and pieces. To me, it's a little bit of when I really understood this, I went through all that messing around trying to work with things. It really said to me, I'd really like to do that better. Now ultimately, I'd like to put this action in a good strong chassis. I know there's a couple out there, not designed the way I want them to be and not easy access to, and I'm working on another company to see if I can get that done as a proper chassis builder to go through and build something. As to whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know. And this part here is something I've just done. This is not something I'm trying to sell. I just want to show people so they can see what I've actually done. I have made some parts that you could buy, but listen, I'll just go through and explain what I've done down the back here. What I actually started with was I managed to get my hands on a damaged MDT ACC chassis. It was actually the fore end, or the centre, the monoblock had actually been broken. It had been parked on by a truck, and so it was actually broken. I got hold of that and it was exactly what I needed. I made up this little section here where I actually used that, machined it all down, made it so then those two bolts that clamped this together become proper fixing points where it actually fixes onto it. That aluminium runs down just behind the trigger guard, so it's actually a very rigid lockup in the back here. And that let me bolt on the ACC buttstock. It's got one of my bag riders on it, which I do for the MDT chassis. But listen, wrapped with it. I should say wrapped with it. I'm wrapped with the look of it. I haven't fired it. I haven't seen what it's going to work like actually, but we are solidly bolted through a couple of bolts to the back of the actual action, so working as nicely as it can do with the way that's all locked up. I made a couple of little aluminium guards on the side here just to make it look right, and I recolored it to match, well, roughly match the grey of the MDT buttstock. But that's what's happened down the back there. So then I've got MDT Pistol Grip, and really very familiar, feels right, feels all the right places. I did a bit of work to get it up, so I got that line of push from the action back through to here, nice and straight. So I'm really looking forward to shooting it. I think all the work I did here largely worked, but it still was a very light hookup through here for what I really want it to be. And my logic of setting up a rifle is to try and transfer as much of the shock through to, not aggressive, not so much push, but those vibrations into the big wobbly human on the back here to try and help with harmonics is largely what I'm up to. So that's the back side of it. All the front is all the same as it was. So yeah, that's all. Nothing to see here. The big differences are also up the front here. Now there's two things we're actually looking at the front. Actually, let me move this right out of the road and I'll move it right across. One is my bipod system on the front here. I think it, to be honest, at the moment at least, it doesn't look quite as nice as what the original bipod system did. By this extra bulge up here, it doesn't look quite as pretty, but in the way of, that's I think a little bit to do with the size of the barrel and things at the moment. But let me tell you what I was actually driven to do this by was I had been fine. I took this bipod system. I'd found that my bipod system with the wider stance and things is a little nicer to use, a little more stable, but these were still great. They still sunk the rifle nice and low and sank really well. I had modified it. I'd done it several different ways where I'd put a lockup on it so it wasn't just a free swivel. So I was happy with it. Sitting on benches and things with the sharp feet, yeah, they're not quite so pretty. You know, they're a little bit more problematic, but didn't have any problems in the field. It's a little bit narrower than this one, but still worked fine. Good extension, good flexibility, all those bits and pieces. I had removed the quick release side of it and bolted it to the chassis because I didn't really like how much it rattled around inside there. But it was working fine. That wasn't the problem. What I got asked a little while ago was by someone saying they've got one of these and they want to run a different barrel and they can't. And then for me, that was a penny drop moment. Well, they said, have you got something to get around that? And I hadn't thought about that process. But what the deal was, is the way these things actually hook up, they're so low, is that they are fitting very close to only about an 1/8 of an inch clearance between the barrel and the bipod. So with a factory size barrel, factory profile barrel, which would be about 22 millimeters down here, 22, 23 millimeters down here, so a reasonably heavy barrel in a factory rifle, that's really all you had room to move. You go up by a millimeter, you'd get away with it. You go up by much more than that, and you're going to the point where you are going to start to touch on your bipod. So that's what forced me to go with, okay, there's the extra detail, and I should be able to make something. So this is what that component looks like. It's got basically there's a couple of things. It's made so it just slides into that chassis, the aluminium U-tube chassis or U-channel chassis, slides in there, and then what I've done, I'll show you in a semi-built one. Basically, it has a little centerpiece in here that goes in through there, a little grub screw, which you can see on this one, and as that twists over, that clamps it inside there. So it pushes in, reasonably tight fit, so it pushes into there, do up a little grub screw, then it's locked. So there is no wobble or play, apart from the rubber feet, but there's no wobble or play to the actual chassis whatsoever. The big feature is you end up with full clearance, and as I can tell you on this one here, there's 3/8 of an inch of clearance in there. So you could run a full 1 1/4 full size barrel through there without any issues. Plus you get all the features of the way these bipod systems work, from the right amount of play, which the TRG was good on, the option of spikes or rubber feet, so changeable feet, yeah, that's a nice feature. It's a little nice, I like the way they don't need adjusting, you don't need to twist them and lock them up. These are set up so you can still move them, twist them around to where you want to, but they don't, if you set the right tension, you don't worry about it. When you're running the bolt, all that sort of stuff, they don't come off center, so you can't hold the same. So that was like I said, that was the little push I needed to get me to that place, and that's what it's got on there. At the moment, I honestly don't think it looks quite as nice as the TRG system. I'm still more familiar with that maybe, but I think it's actually the skinny barrel through there. You put a heavier barrel in here and I think that'll start to work in and make sense. So that's that bit there, that's what I was up to, and yes, that's a bit that I will have on the store shortly. For people who want to do that or run into the same problem, it is just for the TRG. It'll be the same on the 22 and the 42. It'll fit the same places where this bipod fitted. And if you've modified your rifle to take one of these bipods, as I have done, and used it where it uses that factory piece, that clip-in slide rail, then you'll be able to do the same thing. As said, it's not made as the easy in and out, which that one was, which had a simple little toggle on it to be able to pull in and out. This one's made to push in and lock up, so it becomes a rigid part of it. And of course, in the way of putting it away, all that sort of stuff, has the same features where it tucks up like this. Do you put it in the bag, in the safe or whatever, the bipod's out of the road for all that sort of stuff, or for shooting off a bag or whatever it is type thing. Okay, last feature which is different on this rifle, something that's been coming. I actually thought I've had it for a little while, but I thought I would show it off on this one because it's a bit more appropriate, is I've always run my big heavy muzzle brakes, which work really well. I should say there's the 3-port muzzle brake, which is about this profile, and there's the 4-port. The 4-port's always been a heavier one, which was where I came from in the logic of trying to get more braking. But I've found that I can get the same braking out of this more slimline shape. So it's still a 4-port, so really suits this sort of combination. It's still a pretty big, powerful Magnum in the 3/3/8 Lapua. But it's got, listen, it's not light. I know it's light I know it's a heavy barrel compared to some of the guys out there, but in the way of a target shooting barrel, this is still a reasonably light barrel. I think they're 22 millimeters at the end here, whereas my barrels, normally the smallest they finish up as 25 mil and bigger than that. But what I've done, long story short, is made a 4-port, a slim profile 4-port. So it's another thing that'll be on the site soon for those guys with factory barrels and really don't want that bigger size of a muzzle brake, to have this little one which is still going to work at the same sort of efficiency with the ports and the way it works. Nice flat gas out the back here. Haven't fired it yet, but I've done some testing in that form, and listen, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's a bit more appropriate. As to whether I step up to the big one when I change this thing over to a bigger barrel, which ultimately is the plan here now. This barrel's done great work. We've shot it out to 4,000 yards, which is ridiculous, but it did that terrible windy day and a long time ago. And then we've done various shoots in between, and this would probably be in the 2,500 rounds. It's still doing everything as it should do, but it's equally, I think, can be a little better for the quality of everything else. I think we step it up and go into a 28 or a 29-inch barrel in a heavier profile. It'll make my bipod system look better as well. But I think the 3/3/8 Lapua is still a big dog. and there's torque, and I'd like to sort of test that. We're obviously doing a bigger one at this second with the 33XC, which is bigger and badder with a structured barrel. And I was thinking about maybe doing a 338 Norma, but in truth, I do the maths, and the 338 Lapua is still a really, really good round, and that's what I'd like to keep this one as. At the moment, at least, that's where I want to keep it. So probably a big barrel for next season, and then this one go out and play. But I just wanted to introduce, apologies for all the TRG enthusiasts that can't stand to see them modified. It's something that I get it, but it's a great idea, but there's bits and pieces that I could see we could do better. Well, I believe better anyway, and this is what I've done. So, like I said, apologies, but yeah, it's how it is. Anyway, guys, that's about what I wanted to show you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know any thoughts, and we'll catch you next time.